There are various ways in which the character of each piece is expressed in a musical sense. The first of which is, if you look at deep space photographs of these nebulae and galaxies and star clusters, you'll notice that they're highly coloured, many different colours, which of course is done in the photographic process quite often, but still. And I inherited a certain synesthesia, which is the sort of association between colour and sound, or colour and taste. It doesn't necessarily need to be colour and sound, or image and sound, from one of my revered teachers, Olivier Messiaen, the great French composer and organist. And he could actually see colours and hear sounds at the same time. I have that to a very much lesser extent, and some of it's probably rubbed off on me from him. So the colours of the different nebulae, for example, is one way in which the sound expresses the particular deep sky object which I'm evoking in the particular piece. Another way is to do with, how would you put it, the feeling that you get from it. I don't believe in sort of the simplistic ideas of sad, happy feeling in music. It's mostly much more complex than that. But for example, the Virgo nebula, Virgo black hole, it's a very powerful object. It's a singularity which is destroying everything in its path, sucking light into it, and which can't escape. So I had a very big, violent, destructive sound in mind for that. And after that piece, we go into the Bertie's super void, where of course there's almost nothing at all. So you get this contrast between the violent, destructive nature of the black hole and the almost nothingness of the Bertie's void. I've been very interested in electroacoustic music ever since I was a child, and I first heard Gesang der Jünglinge by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, who I was lucky enough later to briefly meet and work with on a performance of Sternklang in Birmingham in 1992, from which a lot of the music that I write now actually springs in a way, as it's to do with the stars and the planets and the galaxies and whatever. But my interest particularly in the electroacoustic music that I'm doing at the moment is taking an instrument, manipulating the samples taken from that instrument, and then feeding it back into the sound of that instrument to make it not completely clear whether you're hearing a live instrument or an enhanced instrument, if you like. So it'll suddenly slightly change in sound, and you're not sure whether it's being made by the live instrument or whether it's a sort of cyber instrument, if you like. And the other thing I like to experiment with is, in a similar way, making an orchestra, if you like, out of one particular instrument. So take a solo viola in this case, and you layer it and manipulate the samples so that you're not clear that it's just one instrument you're hearing. And this is definitely one aspect of the electroacoustic music involved in some notable clusters. Another aspect of the electroacoustic music is an evocation of ghostly after images and voices that might come out of the vast distances in space. If you're familiar with Gesang der Jünglinge, you hear the voices of the children as if emerging out of outer space, and then disappearing back into the nothingness. So this is the other aspect of the electroacoustic music that is involved in some notable clusters. The first element of pitch and duration that is vitally important in a lot of music that I'm writing at the moment is the shape of different constellations in the night sky. So I draw the constellation out and see what is the relationship rhythmically, if you like, between the notes, whether it's da da dee da, for example. And the length of the note is governed by the length of the distance between the stars visually. It's a visual thing. Of course, stars are millions of light years apart from each other, and two stars that are close to each other in the sky are not necessarily anywhere near each other. So it's from an Earth's observer point of view. And of course, the wonderful thing about that is if you just turn it around slightly, the rhythmic duration relationships, ratios, if you like, have changed. So you can have some great fun, as it were, rotating a constellation musically. The intensity of the star to the visual eye also has a role in how intense the note is. For example, if it's quite a faint star, it might be piano, and if it's a very bright star, it might go to fortissimo. So that's one element that governs the music throughout this piece and the whole of the huge cycle I'm working on called Ecliptic Observations, which probably will never be finished, but it's kind of never-ending. I just won a prize for a piece called Green Demon Nebula, which I believe is in Sagittarius. So I suppose that technically also fits into the Ecliptic Observations cycle. The other element, of course, is taken from another great composer who I was lucky enough to have some masterclasses with when I was quite young, called Yannis Xenakis, and he had, well, apart from the stochastic music, which definitely has an influence, he had this idea of rhythmic sieves. So you've got a relationship of pitch and duration, which, if you like, is what I call the DNA of a piece. And this is very important in the 8th section of some notable clusters, which is called Helix Nebula. And of course, DNA is a double helix. So in that one, I've got the idea of the rotating sieve. I mean, you could call it even a serial piece in a certain sense, because there are 12. It's got a kind of 12-note row, but it's organized in the way that Xenakis would have done so, rather than the way that, say, Anton Webern would have done. I must say I'm very impressed by the videos that we made with Daniel, the viola player. I mean, he did so much work on it, and some of them are really, well, they're all really beautiful to look at, and we put a lot of thought into making them. And we came up with this idea of the aesthetics of association. So as there is no link between a sound and anything else really, we came across ideas like, if there was a sound that he was making on the viola which sounded like a boiling kettle, for example, we put a geyser into the video, like one of the geysers in Yellowstone National Park or something like that. So it was the aesthetics of association governed the way we made these videos, and sometimes there are some really successful moments. My personal favourite is in the 3rd section about Pricepi, the open cluster in Cancer, the crab. And I was sitting on the beach here in Bang Saray and watching these tiny little crabs rushing across the sand and disappearing into their holes in all different directions. And I managed to evoke this in the music with these instruments rushing up the register and ending up on a high note. And the conjunction of the image of these little crabs that we've managed to film and the music is just perfect somehow. The only other mention I would say is the Virgo black hole, which literally bends your mind. And I know that Daniel, when playing it, said that it sent his mind kind of twisty, if you like, because the whole piece is about distortion and things being stretched and destroyed and distorted out of true, if you like. Aha, the big philosophical question saved till last, I see. Are we alone in the universe? Well, I would imagine not. No. I mean, recent research has, very recent research in fact, has apparently even been able to detect cities on exoplanets that have been discovered orbiting around stars other than the sun. But the likelihood of us meeting them in my lifetime, at least, or my children's lifetime, is probably fairly small. But another interesting aspect of this, in my opinion, is that there is probably life not just in the universe, but in our own solar system other than on Earth. I mean, there are vast underwater seas on the moon of Saturn called Titan, for example, which it's a famous example of that astronomers always cite about water in the solar system. There's water being detected even on the moon and Mars, and it seems likely that water is essential for the existence of carbon-based life, at least. But it also leaves the question as to whether there are other kinds of life that we wouldn't even know about. It's so totally different from us that we actually wouldn't even assume that they were life at all. So the answer is probably yes, but of course we'll never know the answer. Well, I say never, but hopefully in the future we will know the answer, but it's not, it's mere speculation as far as I can see at the moment.